Welcome back to That Mill podcast and part two of our three-part series, The Lions of 24-25, our full season review. If you've missed part one, this is your opportunity to go back, catch up. We look back at the emotional and chaotic start to this campaign, from Matija Sarkic's heartbreaking passing to a full-blown boardroom reshuffle and the rocky early form that followed. But now we move on. This is episode 2, where Harris bows out and Alex Neil comes in. We're talking November to January, a stretch where the team built momentum, took down the big boys, and then bang, Neil Harris announces he's stepping away. Us Thickos, maybe scaring him out of the club. Throw in a spicy comment like that, a January rebuilds, and a keeper stepping up in Lucas Jensen, and you've got one hell of a turning point. So if you're watching, give us a like and subscribe. If you're listening, leave a review and share it with a mate. I've got Ben with me. How are you, mate?
I'm all good, mate. I'm all good. Probably the most... I was going to say exciting, but probably turbulent that made it exciting part of the season. There was just a lot going on, right? All those points you mentioned, chuck in a mental January transfer window as well, and it was all changed very quickly, wasn't it, mate? From a period of what seemed quite stable at the club for us in recent seasons. Obviously, Neil had made some comments over the summer, which I'm sure we'll touch upon. And sort of that continued over the first part of the season. But it was an exciting and chaotic middle period.
It is indeed, mate. I mean, you was initially going to do part 3 with me, which is a bit of an under-the-lid spoiler for people. But part 2 is probably the juiciest bit, to be fair, mate. I mean, part 1 was quite interesting, obviously, with like the whole board reshuffle, wasn't it? But yeah, I think we've saved the best to the middle bit anyway, mate. So I'm going to cue the intro. We're going to do that, and we'll get straight into the points just mentioned there.
Language you don't usually hear on television. Millwall in London's Dockland.
No one likes it, but we don't care. We're that Millwall podcast. Loud every Friday night right here. Legends like Jimmy Abdul take a share in the kitchen or two. Super Neil Harris a fucking legend too. Through the good times when this life we support the Lions all our life. This ain't no place for TV. This is fucking Millwall through and through. Located on our very own John Ferguson way. Let them all come, let them have their say. Millwall till we die. With that Millwall podcast, loud every Friday night right here.
So there you are. So Ben, by the end of October, Millwall had played 12 games, won 5, drawn 4, lost 3. We're going to go straight into November, mate, and talk about them run of games. Obviously, coming up after that kind of up and down starts of the season, you can call it. We had Leeds, Burnley come into town, Sunderland come into town. Coventry also came to town in this stretch into December. Tough run of games. I actually remember looking back at it, but what was your thoughts at the time? Obviously, a bit of an up and down start to the season, and then you got the big boys coming to town.
Yeah, and I think like most of us, maybe we looked at November and gone, we'll be lucky to probably get 3, maybe 4 points in that period. I think we have Oxford away, and again, I'm sure we'll touch on it in more detail, and that sort of started the rumblings towards the fans and the frustration towards Neil Harris. As you say, we had Coventry chucked in there as well. That was in December, wasn't it, Coventry? But mate, look, a tough month, and one we'll look back on and go, unbelievable, having now known what we do in terms of Burnley and Leeds running away with the league. To beat both those sides, obviously 1-0, both at home. Fantastic results. We obviously went to Stoke away as well.
We did.
And by all means, we were the better side that day. We certainly had chances to win. So we could have made it 3 on the bounce in November, which, as I say, looking at the fixtures on paper would have been dreamland stuff, really. So, look, an excellent month for the Lions. An interesting way that ended, I guess, with the Oxford result, right?
Yeah, I mean, that's it. So the results just confirmed. 1-0 against Burnley. 3 days later, Leeds come to town. We win 1-0 again. Drew 1-1 at Stoke. 1-1 draw against Sunderland. And then a 1-1 draw against Oxford. I mean, you mentioned there, mate. I think Burnley game, wasn't it their reporter said to Scott Parker, Millwall celebrate like they've won the World Cup. That's obviously something to name check there, isn't it? But, that is kind of like, it was a good kind of momentum build. And I think at one point, didn't we not sit in the playoffs? Maybe 5th at one point, if I'm not mistaken. We creeped into it, didn't we? And then obviously if the wheels come off, which we'll talk about in a sec. But beating Burnley and Leeds, both promoted with 100 points. We all know that. Beating them at the Den, it's no accident. I feel like sometimes, and I know they weren't the prettiest of games, but they just highlight. I felt like anyway, looking back at it now, like the kind of togetherness of the team, but also with Harris in charge, we always say the whole adage of when teams come to the Den, they always find it difficult, and there's no difference there, is there?
I think if you look back on any time of Neil Harris being in charge, if you look at those 2 results and they epitomise it, right? You can't get more Neil Harris than 2-1-0 wins at home against the perceived bigger boys of the league. Not the prettiest of games, but just grinding out results, right? And they epitomised it, as I say. So, yeah, look, again, knowing what we know now, how they ran away with the league, how good they were. We saw Burnley, obviously, final game of the season, how they ultimately battered us. I think at that point as well, if I'm not mistaken, mate, they were getting a little bit of stick and there was a lot of rumblings about Scott Parker. But look, even still, yeah, look, as I say, if you could look at 2 results that probably epitomised Neil Harris as Millwall manager, they were probably it.
I think also that run, so if I stretch it back, it was 8 games unbeaten, mate. So if you even run from October, we lost 1-0 to Cardiff, which I spoke about in the last show anyway. But it was 8 games unbeaten, 4 goals against. Probably the rise of the prominence of, I felt like at times anyway, Lucas Jensen, obviously that whole story of him obviously coming in, filling big gloves, to excuse the pun there. And obviously we spoke about in part 1 at length about Matija Sarkic's passing, but 4 goals in 8 games conceded. Tanganga obviously being resolute, but Jensen in particular, I think maybe was this around the time that he was probably silencing the doubters a little bit after the early starts of the season.
Yeah, I think at that point, he's been in net for nearly 3 months then. I think, and again, you probably looking back on it now, you're going back end of October into November was when he started to, or the doubters of, because there was a lot of conversation, right? And it was between us as well on this pod. We spoke about whether Roberts or him should be in charge. We'd seen Roberts obviously in the cup games and he'd done well. And it was, I think, we got to that point in sort of back end of October, November, and those doubts, those questions just went away. And it was very much Lucas Jensen is our number one. And you started to see the qualities that he's got in terms of his shot stopping. I still can't go over his kicking, but I never will. But yeah, I think that question was sort of done by that point, and Lucas Jensen was definitely number one. Yeah,
I mean, let's talk a bit about obviously coming in after Sarkic. I mean, it isn't easy, is it? I mean, words can't even probably describe it. Like coming into that situation, his first game for us was the players' gloves that he's filling, the memorial game at the Den, and then obviously, he's obviously come from Lincoln. I think he got voted best keeper in the league and won the Golden Glove, maybe in League One with Lincoln City. Ends up racking 43 points up across the whole season, so we can probably generalise it a little bit there. But it's not it wasn't an easy task for him, was it? Looking back at it now, kind of from this point of view.
No, and listen, we've seen. We can't even we talk about it as fans and the effect it had as the club with Matty passing, but you can't begin to really understand maybe the pressures that he was under to be number one after that as well. And there would probably been a lot of internal talk. We've seen Andy Marshall obviously talk about the pressures recently, and he needs a break, and he struggled with it as he would because he was close with Matty. So, mate, there would have been a lot of pressure on him. He did have a shaky start, which would have added to that pressure. And they said there was a lot of noise from us fans about the mistakes he'd made early on. So he did really well in the end to cement his place ultimately, because as I said, there was a lot of conversation, not only just between us, but everyone really, whether Robert should be pushing him or should be closer or should be starting more. So, look, he did really well in the end. As you say, he came with a good reputation, winning the Golden Glove, whatever it's called in League One. But yeah, as I say, in terms of that whole Matty piece, the pressures it would have had, we won't know it as fans, but I'm sure he would have put himself under a lot of pressure anyway and wanting to impress when he obviously didn't get off to the best of starts. So he did really well to turn it around.
You mentioned he's kicking, and I mean, I suppose that's flattering to the sea, should we say? But he has definitely proven his shot-stopping capabilities, also like you also said there. So if he can just suss that, I know he's picked up this injury now to go into the end of the season, into next season. He strikes me as a real kind of confidence-based player, and you talk about the pressures as well. But you can see there is a goalie in there. And I think I went to a keeper night, which I mentioned a few times in previous shows towards the end of the season. Andy Marshall was there, amongst other ex-goalies that played for Millwall. But he mentioned about how, he's also his inexperience considering compared to Roberts. Like, he's not been a number one till he went to Lincoln pretty much. Like, he's got probably 150 games under his belt. And in goalkeeping terms, it's almost like you don't judge them on age. You look at their age, and that comes into the factor. But also just playing games and going out on loan and building that kind of experience, it's a big factor, isn't it? And I think he's clearly not the finished product, but there is definitely elements where there is clear areas to identify to improve. But there's still a long way to come from him. You could feel comfortably saying, I feel like.
Yeah, absolutely, mate. And listen, not to go all Football Manager on us here, but I'm going to do it, right? He's what is it? He's how old's Jensen?
26, maybe.
26. So you're not really classed as in your prime, probably as a keeper until your 30s, right? You say there he hasn't had a lot of first team experience for a mid 20-year-old. So to come in, jump up from League One, there's clearly a jump in standards. He, as we've said, did struggle early on. His shot stopping is excellent. We've seen that. He's won us games single-handedly throughout this season. I give him stick about his kicking, but it's probably the reason that he plays for us, mate. And we say that all the time. Like we said it with Bart. If Bart could kick, he wouldn't have been with us, right? He'd been playing the Premier League because he was that good at keeping the ball out the back of the net. Probably an element of that now with Jensen. We've seen how modern football is and how most clubs want to play. Distribution's high on the list in terms of a keeper's attributes now. So, look, I give him stick. A lot of us give him stick about his kicking. But ultimately, what do we want a Millwall keeper to do? And that's keep the ball out the back of the net. And I touched upon it there. He won us games single-handedly at times with his shot stopping. So, as we said, the jump up from League One would have had its own pressures. He's not that experienced, but I do feel like you said he's a confidence keeper or confidence person. He's certainly started to grow into that throughout this period we're talking about now.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I'll put that to people listening and watching. Let us know what you make of Lukas Jensen and how he's gone throughout the whole of the season, especially considering the weight of replacing Matija Sarkic. I mean, we'll move on promptly, Ben. Not to December just yet. The game just before we were obviously touching it earlier. The 1-1 draw away at Oxford United. We're at 1-0 up in that game. I think Tanganga scored, if I'm not mistaken, a header. Yeah, I think he maybe his only goal of the season. To be honest, he got one against Leeds actually as well in the same month. But kind of dug in. They got goal just before 5 minutes before the end. And we spoke about the time, looking back at it now, thinking about it. The away end sections of it just turned on Harris, and this is on the back of being 7 or 8 games unbeaten as well. I'm not going to dig it all up again and relive my thoughts of all of it, but it was rumblings that I didn't expect to see at the time, and obviously led on to, I think it boiled down to obviously Ivanovic being on the bench, Langstaff coming on as a last-minute sub, Bradshaw coming on before him for Coburn, but it was a real shock to see at the time for me personally. I don't know what you remember thinking back to that, mate.
I mean, yeah, again, mate, you would have remembered our group chat was on fire, right? Because listen, you summed it up. At that time, we'd just come out of an excellent run of games. We'd just beaten Burnley. We'd just beaten Leeds. We were in or around the playoffs pretty much at that point. And it was very much, from my perspective, it was, who do we think we are almost? I don't want to, people are going to probably get annoyed at that, but it was a little bit of that for me. I was kind of going, what right do we have to be booing a point away from home in the Championship? I get it's Oxford, but listen, look what Gay Rout's now gone and done and where they finished. They've stayed up comfortably. So any point on the road in the Championship's a good one, in my opinion. We look back now and you say, yeah, Ivanovic was left on the bench. I think Amaku was on the bench and not used that day. Yeah. So, and I think just the fact that we only made 3 subs, right? I think, again, when I looked earlier, that happened. But listen, we can all view our frustrations in different ways. Did I agree with it? No. Did I think we deserved it? Absolutely not. But that was the start of then what proceeded, and Harris made the Thickos comment, right?
He did, yeah. So fast forward a week later, Coventry City come to town. That is Frank Lampard's first game in charge of Coventry. And I'm sure,
Mr. Joe Edwards as well as assistant.
Mr. Joe Edwards, of course. Let's name drop him whilst we're at it.
Yeah.
But after the game, Harris comes out with the now, I guess, famous comment from this season. Just reminds people, the Thickos, this is Millwall. I love it. Do you know what? Looking back at this and just like, it's just,
What a time to be alive.
This is because the context, like we said, just prior to that. And I think a lot of that is Harris' frustration. And a lot of people say he's aiming it more upstairs. Spoiler alert, after this game, Harris comes out on the Monday afterwards and announces he's leaving the club. He'll take the next 2 games, Sheffield United at home and then Middlesbrough away. But yeah, literally on the Monday after, or Tuesday, just maybe prior to the Sheffield United game, he announces he'll step down after the Middlesbrough game. I suppose, looking back at it now, obviously I'm one of the biggest Harris fans. That's fine. But I think now, like, he felt like he was comfortable enough to be in that position to make that sort of comment in the media. It's airing your laundry, dirty laundry in the public anyway, which is probably something I wouldn't say he should have done. But if anyone's going to allow to make that comment, I feel like he probably was allowed to, maybe. But still, it was completely unnecessary, I suppose, looking back at it now, mate. But what was your memories at the time seeing that comment, mate?
I remember kind of thinking at the time, and I remember speaking to my dad and going, he's right. I'll be honest, I kind of went, he's right. Look where the job he's done.
Yeah.
As you said, if anyone was probably allowed to do it or felt like they could do it, it was him. Again, not trying to sort of, with hindsight, this conversation, but again, now looking back at all of the comments he'd made kind of throughout the summer, all the way up until this point, it seemed like every post-match, it probably wasn't, but it seemed like every post-match there was a comment made towards upstairs or the recruitment or Langstaff or it just he wasn't happy, right? And there was clearly a lot more going on than we knew about. But yeah, I remember it happening. I remember speaking to my dad and going, yeah, he's right. Again, who do we kind of almost think we are? Look at the run we've just been on. Look where we are in the league. Look probably where we should be. Look at the amount that's gone on over the summer. And just kind of adding all that up, I was going, yeah, we're in a good spot. What are we moaning about? Was it a bad result after that? After the Oxford game? Absolutely not, as I said. But yeah, it was a bit of a shock to everyone, right? And then obviously social media went into meltdown.
Yeah, social media did go into meltdown. When I think that's probably the time I learned really that social media is it's the vocal minority. I can give and take it nowadays, but at the time it's just like you see it everywhere. You're like, for God's sake! But like, I think it was definitely a friction, wasn't there? When we look back at it now, obviously in the summer, Mark Fairbrother comes in, Steve Gallen comes in, Jimmy Belson's got his own vision, and Harris clearly, I guess, had his nose put out. I think we can speculate and probably say that, can't we? And maybe come to that conclusion in fairness there, Ben. I don't know. He obviously done the job to save us. He kept us up. I think he left us in what was the third best team in the calendar year at the time he left, or from the point he took over to the end. Some might say, well, I definitely said at the time, why are we rocking the apple cart so much here and changing it or letting it happen? But hindsight is a wonderful thing. And obviously we know what went on, and we'll talk about Alex Neil shortly. But yeah, I guess it's fair to say probably he didn't agree with the direction the club was going, mate. And what else is there to say on that, I suppose?
Yeah, I don't think there is much. And as I said, at the time, we all probably looked at it and gone, oh, well, we certainly did, as in you and I. Do we want to change this quickly? Do we want to? Are we ripping it up too fast? Do we need to slowly embed this new way of working or this new structure within the club, etc.? And listen, I think the biggest thing was the Harris and Gallen not seeing eye to eye. Again, I think that's fair to say now. The types of players, again, that we now know that we did go on to sign, and the way forward the club wanted to go, new direction in terms of signings, obviously didn't align with Harris's win now view. There's a big thing we need to speak about in this as well, is that Harris's contract was obviously up at the end of the season. His point of view, and as I've just mentioned, it would have very much been a win now mentality. Does he want to bed in a young Serbian? Does he want all these young players? Does he want a Dan Kelly signed? All these sorts of things now that we know and where the club's heading. he would have been going, is that right for me? Can I win with these youngsters, etc.? And yeah, I think he would have just looked at it and gone, he can't do the best possible job that he wanted to do at the time.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think, again, looking back on it now, it was absolutely the right thing to do. He left us in a good state, a good position. And he always said he would leave when he felt like he wasn't wanted. And he obviously felt like he wasn't wanted at that point.
Yeah, and I suppose coming out saying the Thickos comment, if there was people booing at the Oxford game, he put himself in a position where it's almost like it's time to go, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely.
You've got people that are questioning and him coming out saying that afterwards, and okay, you could attribute it to the board, but I think it was 6-1, half dozen the other for sure. But yeah, you're right. And I remember us all saying at the start of last season, would he stay on past this season? What would it take? But then when you read back now and listen to all his comments in the media and all the things he said, I think he knew, even probably when the changes happened upstairs, maybe, because that was in May time of 2024, this time last year. I think he probably knew at that point, Ben, that he wouldn't be here beyond the season, regardless of what he did almost.
Yeah, I think he would have known. And I think then just with probably Gallen having more power over player signings or that process, Neil Harris is an all-or-nothing manager, right? He screams to me that he would want to be a part in every aspect of the football club. And we were obviously changing that, and he obviously wasn't happy. And again, I think we did our pre-season predictions, right? And we spoke about where Neil Harris would be. And I think we all pretty much unanimously, get my words out, said that he would last the season, but wouldn't go beyond that. So maybe, as I say, maybe he knew that as well. And I think, as we just spoke about, I think just with everything that was going on, it was probably just all adding up to him that he wasn't going to be there beyond that.
For sure. And as mentioned, we lost 1-0 to Coventry. That was the last game before he came out and said he was going to take the last two. We then went on to lose 1-0 to Sheffield United and 1-0 to Middlesbrough. Kind of a typical summary of Harris's season with us, the half season, up and down, good run, then the wheels come off the bus, quite literally, mate. But yeah, look, he put us back in, as you mentioned, in a better position than when he came in. Kind of gave back that Millwall identity. I felt like we lost it at times, especially under Joe Edwards. He was trying to stamp a new way of playing, and maybe we just wasn't there right now at that time when Edwards was there. Harris came in and restored a bit of that Millwallness to us, I suppose, Ben.
Yeah, exactly that. Listen, what happened last season, we've spoken about it a lot, was one of the greatest escapes in my eyes, in a lot of people's eyes. We were doomed, we were down. He made us hard to beat. When you touched on it there, I think when he left, we were the third most successful team in the EFL, whatever it was. So over that period of time of him being there, listen, he put a lot of stability back in the club at a time where we desperately needed it, because we've spoken about the Matty passing, obviously with JB Senior. We've had a turbulent couple of years, right? So we desperately needed someone like Neil Harris to steady and steer the ship, and he definitely did that. And again, I just feel like it was the right time. It just was. It's easy, again, to sit here and say it now, but he would have known. We started to maybe know. And the one thing I would say is I don't think he would have ever wanted it to get to how it was when he left the last time, which obviously it got a little bit nasty towards him. I don't think he ever wanted that again. So, yeah, look, he did an incredible job. A job that I didn't think he could do, to be honest. I thought we were doomed, as I said. But absolutely, he left us in a much better place than when he took over.
No, for sure. So that's the end of Harris. We're not going to talk about him anymore in this rest of the show. I'll try anyway not to. And then, so yeah, following them games, obviously he took the Middlesbrough game, as mentioned. That was his last game in charge. We then
just touch upon that? Just not the Middlesbrough game per se, but the fact that he came out and said, I know we don't want to talk about Harris anymore, but the fact that he came out and said he was leaving but was going to stay for the Middlesbrough game. Did we find that a bit weird?
It was a bit weird, wasn't it? It's not the done thing nowadays. Again, I think it's more like, I think it was probably the club thinking, let's not give a new manager or Adam Barrett the two tough games there because you're playing Sheffield United and Borough away, I suppose. Is that maybe what it was, the angle was? Or it was weird. I think he probably decided he was leaving maybe after the Coventry game. Let's probably speculate that on the Saturday. Maybe thinking he'll take the next two games and tell the board. Maybe anticipating it wouldn't come out in the public. I don't know. Would you think like that?
Yeah, I was just just something I wanted to ask really, because for me it's just not a done thing anymore, is it? When managers know their time's up, they just leave. Again, like you said, I think it had to have been the club just asking him to stay on for one more game just to maybe steady it. But yeah, it was an interesting one that he'd come out and said he was leaving, but then was going to stay on for that extra game. So
yeah, no, you're right. It isn't a done thing for sure. But he took us on anyway. We lost the last two. Thanks, Harris, and see you later.
Would have made playoffs, so weren't for those 2 games.
You say that, right? But it's all special, right? But no, I mean, like I mentioned, 2 games of Adam Barrett or 3 games of Adam Barrett in charge. I remember thinking back to this time. It felt like we took ages to get the appointment of Alex Neil. But Adam Barrett comes in, but then he actually technically he had 3 games in charge. But by the 3rd game, Alex Neil was sitting in the stands with Berylson at Coventry away, wasn't he? Obviously, 1-1 nil against Blackburn. Ivanovic scoring a header last minute of the game, kind of bringing his name forward into the storyline, and obviously the rest is history in that sense for this season. And then obviously a trip to Carroll Road on Boxing Day, we never win there, and we didn't win, we lost 2-1. And then a 0-0 draw against Coventry, obviously playing twice in December. But yeah, as mentioned, Ben, it felt like at the time the club were being patient to get the right man, and you could say it paid off massively because look what happened since, obviously in hindsight, like we said. But it was only a couple of games really, but it felt like the longest process ever to get that person in. Don't know what you think.
Yeah, it did. Matt Bloomfield was a short price favourite for a long period of that.
Yep.
Was rumoured to have been interviewed by the club, whether that was true or not, don't know, but rumoured to have been. Yeah, it did feel like a long time, actually. I remember there was probably at least 2 or 3 shows that we ended up doing, didn't we, lives and things where we were talking about it. And yeah, it did seem like it went on for a while. But was it probably only a couple of weeks?
It was, yeah. I mean, he left. So he technically handed his notice in after Coventry and then the 2 games. I suppose that's probably the argument if you include the fact that he said he's leaving prior to the Sheffield United game, then he had the Sheffield United Borough game, Blackburn, Norwich, Coventry. It's 5 games without an appointment, but gave the club a bit of time, I suppose, with him taking charge. But it went over 3 weeks basically. But I think it's 3 weeks well spent when you get Alex Neil at the end of it, right? Surely.
Yeah. Again, we go through sort of the candidates that were mentioned. I've already spoke about Bloomfield. I was a little bit like too much of a one-man club. Could he have taken a step up? Obviously, Wickham were flying at that point, and they were top of the league, I'm almost certain, throughout that time. But yeah, I was a bit sceptical with him. Stephen Schumacher was mentioned, wasn't he? He was obviously out of a job. I was keen on him. Alex Neil was, I think he was about single figures in the betting. But if you actually went through all the people that were sort of the top of the list of the betting, no one had credentials like Alex Neil in terms of promotions, guiding teams through periods. And I just used his time at Preston with that. Similar size to us, similar budgets, that sort of thing. So, yeah, you go through all the candidates that were available. Definitely was the best on paper for us. And I said this to my dad. My dad wasn't overly happy when it first happened. But I don't think there was anyone better in that list. For me, yeah, who we could have picked or appointed.
Yeah, for sure. So he was appointed on December the 30th. First game in charge against Oxford on January the 1st, New Year's Day, joined by assistant manager Martin Canning. You mentioned the championship pedigree there. I mean, both Berylson and Gannon both mentioned it. He's managed 300 plus games at championship level. It just felt, I think, a smart choice, but underwhelming was almost the tone across the border, really, wasn't it? And it's funny to say it now, but, he was the right man, really, I suppose, when you look at all the credentials and stack them up. If that was the 3-man shortlist, Schumacher, Bloomfield and Neil, you got someone with 300 plus games, a couple of promotions on his CV, tick, 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 and surely, right? But it did feel a bit safe. But then ultimately, that's the right thing to do, isn't it? In the end of the day, when it comes to football, clearly.
Well, the way I always answered this was, who would you rather have, or who's a better coach, Alex Neil or Neil Harris? And again, it might be easy to say now because of how it finished this season and how we ended up playing at times, that sort of thing. But just from even years gone by, I always say Alex Neil, right? He's managing the Premier League. Neil Harris will never manage in the Premier League. But yeah, there was an undertone. I think it was quite split, but I think it was a 50-50. Some were saying it was a good appointment, some were going typical Mill, safe, not very exciting, all that sort of thing. But yeah, as you say, mate, looking back now, was there anyone better? Again, would you rather a Matt Bloomfield? There's a lot of risks attached to that. Or have you got someone, again, coming into a position almost Gary Rowett-esque of needing to prove a bit of a point? And I think there's definitely that with Alex Neil. So, yeah, looking back now, it ticks all the boxes.
I think the thing was, I think everyone felt a bit maybe disenchanted with all three of them, and that everyone was aiming for the Mark Robbins of this world, or Tony Mowbrays of this world. And obviously, look at the pair of them. Tony Mowbray's out of a job again.
Gary O'Neill. There was a lot of
Gary O'Neill
about Gary O'Neill, right? That was just never going to happen.
No, for sure. I mean, before we talk about the January window, mate. Anyway, so Neil came in. He had to wait a month for his first home win against QPR in February. Obviously, it's a rocky start. Gary Rowett comes to town with his Oxford boys, and at the time they're flying. He does a job on us, Gary Rowett, like Gary Rowett typically does at Championship level. A draw at Sheffield Wednesday, 2-2. An FA Cup win, 3-0 against Dagenham Redbridge, the rise of Bangor Williams, and a 1-0 defeat to Hull City at home, and a 2-2 draw to Cardiff. But we did win, obviously, in two away games on the bounce with Luton and Pompey, both 1-0. But a steady start for Alex Neil, wasn't it? It was get your feet under the table. He obviously mentioned about not having the chance to really work with the side on the training pitch. It was just game that time of year, and we all know that, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. I think looking again, keep saying, but looking back now, the Dagenham Redbridge game was probably bigger than we all thought. Yeah. Just to get, I don't think there was any doubt that we probably would have beaten them, but in the way that we beat them. You spoke about Bangor Williams there, and obviously him burst onto the scene that night. But yeah, just an important result for Alex Neil. Was a tough start. He mentioned, as you mentioned, he'd spoken about not having spent that much time with the players because it was just game. And then, I mean, an excellent result at Luton. Could have been more comfortable had Aaron Connolly not missed a penalty. Another excellent result at Pompey. And then you're starting to go, okay, we're now seeing what Alex Neil wants to try and do and how we want to play under him. But yeah, a pretty steady start, I would say, to him. His career with us.
We'll probably talk about Serb again in a bit later, but do you think he came with a remit, or maybe from above, of he's got to play? Because as soon as he came in, he's straight aside. Maybe he sees his talent, and we all know what the Serb's capable of now, but it's very clear the predecessor didn't have him, didn't want him. Maybe thought he could come good in the future, but wasn't anywhere near the level he needs to be to play in the Championship. We see how the rest of the season plays out, whatever. But do you think maybe that was a bit of a pressure from the club, maybe to get behind him, seeing as we spent a bit of money on him and he's 19 years of age?
Well, it's an easy question to answer now, knowing what he's done. But at the time, did I think it was the right thing to do? Had I seen enough from him to go, he has to start every week, regardless if he's going to score or not going to score? I was very much in agreement with Harris at the time. I hadn't seen enough for him. I think we probably both were. Did he come in with a remit? He has to be played. Listen, if he did, then Gallen's some judge. Hoping that is the case, and he is a judge. And we're going to get more Ivanović's through the door. But I don't know. Alex Neil spoke about the journey that we're trying to go on, right? The change of direction in the club and all that sort of thing. So that must have been spoken about. I struggle with the idea that we would tell any manager who has to play. That's the only thing I would say. Do you think Alex Neil would have taken the job being told that he has to play X, Y, or Z? I don't know. I don't know.
I don't think so either. But it did feel like it was obvious that, well, it was an obvious correlation to he's not playing until Neil Madge comes in. Maybe he just fancied him and thought, that's how I want to play.
Would there have been an aspect of looking at what we had?
Yeah, for sure.
And there's probably one player in there that we can safely talk about, and that's Langstaff. And Harris couldn't have him. Alex Neil's come in and doesn't fancy him. So it may just been a bit of a process of elimination, right? And going, he can't be doing any worse than what we've got or have been playing. So,
yeah,
it might be that. It might be that Gallen and Neil have gone, he's a decent player. We've got to play him. Hopefully it's that, as I said.
No, of course, for sure. Yeah, let's talk about anyway. He comes in the January window, and naturally, Mill decide to try and reinvent the wheel and sign 9 or 7, 8 or 9 players. A lot of youngsters came in. I'm not going to touch on every single player here, but I've got to hand in my head Camille Negley, obviously club record sign on deadline day. Luke Cundle, Aaron Connolly, you mentioned him already earlier on. Zach Lovelace, Tristan Crammer, Zach Sturch. I think Benicio Baker's another one. Any more escape my mind? I'm sure there's another one I've missed in there because it felt like a merry-go-round at times, but what did you make of that January window, mate? Looking back at it now, obviously the departures was, everyone knows, Romain Esse leaves. I suppose we can talk about him a bit if you want. And Tom Bradshaw, your love child, going as well, mate. I mean,
my love child, yes. Let's start on Bradders, mate. Look, right time for Bradders to leave. It just was right. Great servant to the club, whether you like him or not. Be critical of his goals to game ratio, although whatever, he always gave 100%. And yeah, I think will be looked back on as probably an underrated player for us, or underappreciated is probably a better way of looking at it. But yeah, right time for him to move on. SA, obviously, the rumblings were going on for a while. Did I expect it to happen in January? Probably not. I thought we'd lose him at the end of the season. But Gallen's best mate and Dougie Freeman obviously struck a deal. Again, now looking back, would I rather SA or the players that we signed? Definitely all those players that we've now signed. I think we're a much better squad now and stronger starting 11 now. Crammer was an interesting one. Again, we'd been highly touted whilst he'd been on loan, come from obviously signed from Brentford. Then all that craziness of all the youngsters, right, was just I didn't see. Yeah, I didn't see Lovelace coming back. The chap from Brighton, whose name's completely escaped me.
Benicio Baker.
Cundle, I thought was an excellent signing. Really did. I thought he will really add a lot in number 10. And then the Negley one was just completely out of the blue, wasn't it, mate? I don't think anyone expected that on deadline day. Obviously, then all the clips went round like wildfire, and I thought, fucking hell, what have we got here? But yeah, look, again, it was a mental January window. One that I didn't think we were capable of having, really. You look at other clubs when they do things like that, and yeah, it's never thought we would. But again, it's now, we can clearly see the direction of the club, right? When Alex Neil came in and the club spoke about this change of direction, we're all probably a little bit sceptical. But then when you see it being put into action with the January transfer window, you can't not be excited by it, right?
No, for sure. I mean, you mentioned Football Manager reference earlier. Camille Negley is the most Football Manager sign out of nowhere, isn't it? Let's have it right.
Yeah, 100%. 100%.
I think, yeah, it's true. On the SA departure, obviously, rumours have got just under £15 million for him. Who knows if that's the right price or not? Time will tell. But I think the club done well to receive that, to be honest, as well. But I mean, they obviously, we'll talk a bit about it. They timed down to a contract at the start of the season. Obviously, then the interest comes around. Palace think this player's worth the risk. And even if he doesn't play much the rest of the season, we're going to get him in, right, I suppose. And that's all she wrote. But 15 million quid, just under, for a player that's played half a season and sustained first-team football in Championship. It seems like crazy, but SA is someone that we feel like, I suppose, is destined for big things. I don't know if you feel the same.
Well, yeah, of course he is. What I always said throughout that, mate, is it was right for every party. That's how it felt to me. The money was good enough, or good for us. It allowed us to reinvest into those players and back into the squad. We were never going to get to realise his potential or see his potential. He was always going to be sold before that. If he ever started hitting the numbers that we thought he may be capable of, he would have been gone. So we were never going to see more than probably what we got from SA in terms of his actual output, goals, numbers up to that point. It wasn't like he'd scored 10 goals and 10 assists, was it? Through his time with us. He was certainly improving and was certainly the main man almost in the side at that point. But yeah, it just felt like it was right for everyone. It's a good move for SA. I say Palace obviously develop young players. I've just said a couple of times. I think it was right for all parties.
How far do you think he goes, SA? I know it's a left field question there a little bit, but is he going to be a top 6 player for team in the Premier League, or is he going to go out to Europe somewhere? Like, I think of Valise as a direct comparison, not necessarily exactly the same player, the same qualities, but that trajectory he adds, is SA on for that as well, do you think?
I don't know.
Mm.
Oh, that's a real shit answer. I genuinely don't know, mate.
Honestly,
I
I
don't.
like it. It's all right, honestly.
Yeah, I'm not sure. Could I see him breaking into Palace's first team? Yeah. Do I see him playing for England at some point? Obviously, he's played all youth levels, but do I see him ever being good enough and getting into the first team? Possibly not. Possibly not. An interesting question. That. What do you think?
Yeah. I don't. Yeah, that's it. I mean, I'll open it to everyone in the comments as well to let us know, where did Esse end up in his career when he's 30 years of age? Could he be, is he going to be a world beater? Is he going to be a decent Premier League footballer that signs for, teams that get promoted all the time and try to strengthen their squads? It's a hard one. I don't know. Maybe he scores the win in the World Cup final. He scores the win in the World Cup final next year, mate. You never know.
If Romain Esse is on the Football Manager 25 Wonder Kids list, we know he will be.
Football Manager never get it wrong, do they, mate?
Never get it wrong.
Yeah, I mean, so the pick of the bunch, I suppose, from January window, mate. We could talk from hindsight, but it was quite scattergun, and we never saw Zach Lovelace play. We didn't see Benicio Baker play, but clearly, I think Lovelace might have been someone that might have featured, to be honest, towards the end of the season, especially with his, playing for Rangers and stuff. But Tristan Crammer is obviously probably the highlight of all of that, isn't he, mate? And what he went on to do for the rest of the season. I mean, we're not talking about the rest of the season after January, unfortunately, mate, but you can obviously give me your thoughts on Crammer. And I think, it felt like it was a bit not underwhelming, because he's coming from Exeter, but he's a signing that fits the profile we speak about, isn't he? He's playing League One, League Two football, been in the Premier League with Brentford as well, and obviously part of their B team, but fits that profile exactly well of what clearly the club are trying to do, aren't they?
Well, out of the list of signings, mate, for me, without doubt, was Kundal. He was the one I was most excited about. We've been screaming out for a number 10. I've seen him. He'd been on loan at Stoke. I've seen him a few times. Just thought really neat, tidy footballer. Definitely an improvement in terms of what we've got in there. People looking at off Honeyman's back now. He was the one I was going, he's the difference maker for us. He's going to be really neat, really tidy, and a really good addition. Going back to your point of Kramer, again, didn't really know much about him. Had to look at where he was. There's certain academies and certain teams, right? I know he came from France before he went to Brentford, but you always think there's certain clubs that if players come from them, they're going to have sort of good stock, if that makes sense. I think you look at sort of your Brentfords, your Brightons, just those sorts of clubs, good academies, do things the right way, probably sign the right sorts of players. When you get players from those sides, you think they're going to be of good stock, as I said. So didn't know anything about him, but again, what he's gone on to do, playing out of position again mainly. Well putting that out. He's a centre half, and he's a big old lad to be playing at right back. He's been excellent. It'd be interesting to see where his long-term future lies, but he's been excellent.
Next Tanganga, mate, as part of the team that wins us the championship title, right?
Without doubt. That's something to say about that.
Yeah, and he would, and I'll give Coops a lot of respect, clearly, if I do. But you do wonder if, I don't know, we're looking ahead to next season now, but there's a recruitment step here. I don't know, it's going to be intriguing to see how it plays out, isn't it? Because competition for place is what you want. That's exactly what you want, isn't it? And Crammer probably expected himself not to come straight to the side, but injuries dictated it. Leonard injured, Danny McNamara injured. In steps Crammer, and as you mentioned, out of position, gets man of the match, I think, in his first 2 games. And, it's a credit to him, isn't it? But it does open up the door to the whole healthy competition argument, doesn't it?
Yeah, I think I said it earlier, just on the Esse thing. Listen, we're a much stronger squad now. And that's not something that we could have said probably over recent seasons at all. Starting 11 was good enough. And then outside of that, we looked light, right? We didn't have a lot of game changers. You look at it now and look at the players that didn't feature in that last game against Burnley. How much stronger would we have been if we had those players available, and we still put on a good show? I just think now we're a much stronger squad all round the pitch. But healthy competition, certainly in those defensive areas. I don't want to talk about looking at obviously this season or the upcoming season too much. But look, if we do lose Tanganga, we have got someone on, so a ready-made replacement. He's not that good, I don't think, Kramer, but he's going to be a very good player for us. But sure. Yeah, as a whole, we're a much stronger and better squad now.
Yeah, no, I totally agree with you, and I don't think anyone else would argue against that. Do you think the January window was a strengthening window or a bit of a bodge job, I suppose, is the phrase I'm going to use here? If you let us know in the comment section below. We'll round up anyway the January games anyway. We mentioned it before we talked about the transfers, but I don't think if we ended this show without talking about Ivanovic's 2 goals against Luton and Portsmouth, I think we'd probably do him justice, mate. If you're Neil Harris, I'm sure he probably turned off both them games, mate, if he was watching them. I mean, yeah, firstly, the goal against Luton, just showing what he's capable of and what that's obviously taking it down. Great finish. And then Bangor Williams stepping up for the assist for the goal at Pompey. Just 2 players there that really kind of grabbed the headlines, I think, on the pitch in January, weren't they? And
Luton, mate, he got the assist for Ivanovic at Luton as well. He chipped it into him.
Yeah, you're right. Very true. So
he was someone. I mean, if you talk about, he naturally gets compared to SA, right?
Mm.
We've already seen far more impact from RBW than we have from Remain SA in that same period of time, say 6 months, that first 6 months of the season. He is someone that's got everything. Genuinely, he's got everything. And by all accounts, I hadn't seen him or heard of him really, like most of us, until he stepped into the first team side. People had said to me he's a centre midfielder by trade, or has been in the sort of the younger ages.
Yeah, he was.
So he's almost been playing out of position. He's been playing sort of that wide left or forward left role, playing the 10. Oh, mate, he's just... I am so excited about him. I love him. He's got his pass to Ivanovic, mate. We talk about the goal. It's an unbelievable finish.
Yeah.
Unbelievably taken. So cool in front of goal. The pass was to an inch perfection. Vision. I just loved it. And yeah, we talk about the Luton goal from Ivanovic, how well he's taken that. The ball probably from Bangor Williams probably wasn't the greatest. It was chipped in at a bit of a funny height and he chests it down, and obviously unbelievable strike. So yeah, look, moving forward, if them two can strike up that sort of partnership over a full season, yeah, we haven't seen that sort of technical quality, have we, in a pairing or a potential pairing for a long while. But yeah, exciting, mate, from both of them. We saw 2 very different goals, right, from Ivanovic. One more instinctive in terms of the Luton goal, and one where he had a lot of time to think about it in terms of Portsmouth, and just you saw his composure, right? But yeah, just I'm excited by them too.
Yeah, you took the question from my mouth. Is that something we're going to get used to seeing? I'm already seeing the visions of assist, Reece Bangor Williams, goal with Ivanovic next season, mate. Is that? I mean, we've got the luxury of talking about it obviously towards the end of May, but the club have agreed a deal to sign Bangor Williams on a 5-year contract, which surprised me the length of it. I
think that tells you the level that he's viewed at within the club, and dare I say, maybe the interest already that's around him. If he's on a 5-year deal, we're going to get more money, right? If he has another good season, he's got 4 years left on his contract, more money for us. If he has another good 2 seasons, he's still got 3. So, great business by the club. Just keep him fit. I think that's the only concern, right? We've seen a couple of times. You know, he's a young lad still, but let's keep him fit. But if we can keep him and Ivanovic fit and firing for a whole season, yeah, I'm hoping we see that Bangor Williams assist, Ivanovic goal for certainly another full year at least before we lose one of them.
Well, no, like I said, we'll be in the Premier League, mate.
Anyway. I'll be in the Premier League by then.
I think that wraps up everything, to be honest with you, mate. I think I'm only taking you to the end of January, but yeah.
I'll carry on. I've enjoyed it.
Maybe I'll get you on for part 3 if you want, mate. That's for sure.
Mate,
yeah. But it just highlights like the up and downness of Millwall, isn't it? When you think back to this 3-month periods, one manager settled in going into November, then you get another one coming, and then we have the whole upheaval in January. It's the most Millwallness of ever, I feel like.
Yeah, and I said it earlier, I don't think I ever envisaged us or seeing a window like we just had. It makes it very exciting now for this summer. I know we're not talking about this year, but it does make it exciting. And it makes it exciting to see, like we just said, the youngsters and the players that started to make the name for themselves over that sort of back end or half a season with us, what they can do over a full season. But yeah, a scatty year. When we just needed a bit of stability, we just decided to send into exciting chaos, as we said at the start of the show, right? But it's exciting and we're trending very much in the right direction.
We wouldn't have it any other way, Ben. That's how I feel on the summer.
I didn't think we'd have it this way at all, mate, to be fair. So, yeah, listen, it's brought the excitement back around the place. Yeah, mate, it's exciting, right? It's something to look forward to. Not that it never has been, but even more so now.
I'm already booking in flights to Mercy, mate.
We all are.
Right, so that is the end of part 2. Harris bows out, Alex Neil comes in. We said goodbye to a club legend, saw Lucas Jensen rise in the shadow of heartbreak, watched the young squad get reshuffled in January. Football wasn't always pretty, but you could feel something was building. If you missed part 1, go back and check that out, get the full story from the start, and get ready. In episode 3, we covered the final push, a new manager finding his feet, and a late playoff charge with a trip to Selhurst Park to spice that one in. Subscribe if you haven't already. Follow us on socials at @ThatMillPods, and tell us, did the club make the right calls in around the time of November to January? We'll feature your reactions next time. Thank you very much for watching, and that's us.
Oh, giddy up and get away. Oh, we're going Millwall, and we're going today. Here we go. Rocking on.